I'm Theo from Ocean Liner Topic, and today we're going to start the history of the RMS Titanic. And then after the RMS Titanic, we'll move on to the Olympic and the Britannic and so on and so forth. So, the RMS Titanic and the Olympic laid down their keel on, let me figure it, I have to remember, hold on on Wednesday, December 16th, 1908 with Harland and Wolff. Harland and Wolff was the designated shipbuilder for White Star Line. And the White Star Line, who basically raised out of the bankruptcy that we know today, was Thomas Ismay. The owner of it was Thomas Henry Ismay. And you may know his son, J. Bruce Ismay. After Thomas Ismay died, J. Bruce Ismay became owner. And then J.P. Morgan came in and bought them. So, the Americans now own the White Star Line. But it was still under British crew, British shipbuilding, and stuff like that. So, when they laid down the keel of the RMS Titanic and the RMS Olympic side by side on December 15th, 1908, the first ship's keel was laid down. The second ship took 2 months, which is Titanic, which is hull number 401, took 2 months later to lay down its keel. So basically, there was the trimmers, there was the riveters, and there was the tossers. The tossers threw hot, boiling, red-hot rivets at the rivet catchers, and the rivet catchers handed them to the riveters. So basically, some of the riveters hammered the hot rivets into the hulls, which is Olympic and Titanic's hulls. But there were some, like the machines, like the steel rivet machines, were able to get midsection of the ship. Basically, Titanic's midsection is made out of steel rivets, and the bow and the stern, because they couldn't get the rivet machine to go through that properly, were made out of wrought iron rivets. So, it took 3 years to build them. Olympic was first launched in 1911. So, and then next year after that, before Olympic's maiden voyage, they decided to launch the Titanic before Olympic left out Belfast for her maiden voyage. Titanic was launched May 15th, 1911. So, there was 100,000 spectators to watch the Titanic be launched. There was Bruce Ismay and a lot of those people. If you wanted to see the Titanic on a grandstand, you had to get a launch ticket, which back then it cost like $5 as American money would say. And then you were able to watch it. So it took less than 60 seconds for the Titanic to go down the slipway into the water, into the low. And then, so once it hit the water, chains will stop it, and it will sit dead still. And that's when the tugs will tow her to the dry dock. Will tow her to the dry dock where she can go through the final preparations of construction. Basically, during that time, she had to get her interiors built, the funnels stepped in or put on, the engines put in, the interiors carved and everything else, the beds and everything, the food and everything. After that was done, Titanic and the Olympics dimensions were 882.5 feet long, 92.5 feet wide. Titanic weighed slightly more than Olympic, but I'll tell you the reason why in a second. Olympic weighed 45,000 tons. The Titanic weighed 46,000 tons. So, the reason why Titanic weighed 1,000 tons heavier than Olympic was because Mr. Thomas Andrews made made some notes to make Titanic a little bit better than the Olympic. So how Titanic was, Olympic was open promenade. Titanic was enclosed. Half part enclosed, half part open. And that helped add the weight. But they also added a private promenade for the staterooms, like Israel and Strauss's stateroom, and the other one on the port side. So, and then you had the restaurants and everything else, and that kind of added to the weight. So, on our full carry, on our full load, Titanic weighed 52,423 gross tons. Gross tons is not the weight of the ship, technically. It's the internal volume. But the Olympic and the Titanic both have 46,000 shaft horsepower. That may be a lot because cars nowadays don't have nearly that much horsepower. But for a ship that size, it was slow. Titanic's top speed was 23 knots. With her, she had 3 engines, 2 triple expansion engines, and 1 low medium pressure turbine engine, which is made by Charles Parsons. And you may think that's fast for a ship, but there's 4 ships that could beat the Titanic anytime. There was the RMS Lusitania, which was one of the Atlantic Greyhounds that smashed the Atlantic speed record, which is called the Blue Ribbon, that fastest ship across the Atlantic at 25 knots. And then there was the Mauretania, RMS Mauretania by the Cunard Line, smashed that record from her sister Lusitania at 26.8 knots, which is 4.5 days. And she still held, Mauretania held that record for 19 years. And then until the RMS Queen Mary came in, that ship had almost 100,000, more than 100,000 horsepower, shaft horsepower. So it went 33 knots. So it crossed the Atlantic in 3.5 days. So that's another ship could be Titanic. Our ship, us Americans, is the ship that we call ours is the SS United States. It took the Queen Mary speed record and smashed it in half. Basically, the SS United States top speed was 40 knots. It crossed the Atlantic in almost 2.5 days, almost 2 days, full 2 days. And now that you don't see these ships like the Titanic, you don't see them around no more because of the cruise liners, because in the jet airliners. That's the reason why the cruise ships decided to take over for the ocean liners, and the jet airliners took the passengers from the ocean liners. So the only ocean liner around right now is RMS Queen Mary 2. But let's get back to Titanic. Titanic started her sea trials on April 2nd. It was planned for April 1st, 1912, but it's because of weather issues, it wouldn't have been a good idea. So they started her sea trials April 2nd, 1912. So basically, the sea trials is basically where the British Board of Trade boards the ship, the captain and the officers, which is only a few officers at the time, where they would test the ship about 14 hours on basically how fast she would go, forward and backwards. Sorry, this is my puzzle mode Titanic, but still. And see how far she would turn, see how well she would stop, which she stopped pretty good for her ship her size. She stopped 3 times her own length, which is almost a mile, or a little bit more than a mile. So, for a ship her size, that was excellent. She passed her sea trials with flying colors. So, the British Board of Trade made the okay for her to carry passengers for a year. So, and then once they did that, she sailed off to Southampton, ready to take on the world. Okay, guys, I'm going to end it here. So, if you want to learn more about the RMS Titanic, I would subscribe. I would like you to like and comment and see what ships you want me to teach you about next. Alright, guys. See you later.